We can do it the easy way or the hard way. The words of US President Donald Trump on acquiring Greenland. Emboldened after his recent intervention in Venezuela, Trump's bullish stance on the Danish territory has shaken Europe, with the Danes saying they're ready to defend their values. So, how far is Trump prepared to go, and how will Europe respond? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, President Trump says acquiring Greenland is an issue of national security for the United States and that he will have it one way or the other. Greenland's parliament says they don't want to be American or Danish, they just want to be Greenlanders. The island is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and its Prime Minister has warned that if the US attempts to take it by force, that would spell the end of NATO.
Strategically for the United States, it would be nice.
Greenland is a wonderful place. We need it for international security.
We need Greenland.
It's a rhetoric which goes back to his first term. Trump's intention to buy or take by force the semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. This time, he seems more serious than ever.
If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland, and I am not going to let that happen.
Is there any deal they can offer you?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to make a deal with them. It's easier. But one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland.
In response, Greenland's 5 parliamentary parties have issued a joint statement rejecting the US president's threats, saying we don't want to be Americans and that the island's future must be decided by its people. European allies have been rallying behind the Arctic territory, discussing plans to boost military presence there. The Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, warns that if Trump chooses to attack, it would put NATO's survival in jeopardy.
If the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including our NATO.
The Trump administration has even discussed compensating Greenlanders for their homeland, with payments reportedly reaching up to $100,000 per person.
No, he could never buy us. Ever in my life, I would.
500,000?
No.
A million?
Not.
You can say any number,
Any number in the world, and we'll know. And we'll say no. It belongs to us and only us only.
Trump first proposed the US buying Greenland back in 2019 during his first presidential term. Could 2026 be the year he successfully acquires the world's largest island?
Right, well, let's bring in our guests on this one. Joining us from Washington, D.C., we have Carla Sands, chair of the Foreign Policy Initiative and former US ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark. In Copenhagen, we have Nauja Lynge, a Greenlandic-Danish writer and lecturer. In Odense, in Denmark, we have Morten Ronnelund, a Danish journalist at the national newspaper Avisen. And joining us from Brussels, we have Jamie Shea. Jamie is a former NATO Deputy Assistant Secretary General. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Carla, to you first. The words of your president, Trump, the easy way or the hard way? Who's going to stop him?
Well, I don't think that's how I look at the situation. I look at the situation with two important facts. Number one is the Greenlandic people have said that they're going to go independent. In the 20th century, Iceland, which was part of the Kingdom of Denmark, went independent and they've thrived. The Greenlanders plan to go independent. They will go independent in the 21st century. President Trump is aware of this. Greenland, because of its small number of citizens, about 56,000, will never be able to defend itself or develop itself internally, economically. They're going to need a big friend. Denmark doesn't have a big enough economy to do that. And so Denmark's not able to defend or develop Greenland. It's like when you own a house you can't afford to own. You're not taking care of it. You can't make the payments. So they just keep the Greenlanders on sort of a substance welfare, I would say like a welfare supplement to their budget. But it's not enough. They don't have the capacity to build out Greenland and actually develop it so the Greenlanders can have prosperity.
Well, Carla, let me just come in on this. You know, a lot of people in Europe feel this is not America's business.
Well, Greenland's part of North America. It's not part of Europe, and it's part of our security. We can't allow it to fall into adversarial hands. And the second point I was going to make is that Denmark is part of NATO. It's a NATO ally. However, in the NATO Charter, Article 3 says that every NATO ally has the ability to defend their own territory. And then Article 5 come to the defense of their allies. So Denmark is already in violation of the NATO Charter. They can never even hope to defend Greenland. They don't have the capacity. And in fact, in 2019, when Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen told President Trump at his urging that she would invest $200 million into Arctic security, she didn't. She invested $2 million, and it wasn't really security. So as soon as President Trump is out of office, whatever they're promising right now will go away. Denmark has no intention of actually defending Greenland. They never have. They'd rather invest the money into their generous social welfare programs. And the people prefer that. They are not interested in investing in Greenland. They want their own lives to be great. And so it is a problem that Denmark's not able to solve.
Thank you, Carla. Well, let's go to Denmark. First of all, to you, Morten. What do you make of what you've just heard from Carla?
Well, there is international law, and there seems to be a few issues conflated here. One is the security issue. We're trying to ramp up how much money and how much we spend on security in Europe as a whole, but also in our territories. And Greenland is a large place, but we are ramping up on that. Also, throughout the years, there have been different negotiations with the U.S. on U.S. troops, U.S. military presence on Greenland. And it seems that the U.S. haven't used this opportunity. They have scaled down. It's like it's one base and 150 U.S. Military personnel. It could be a lot more. So we're open to help in the security area if the U.S. wants a bigger presence on Greenland. But we're not ready to give away the territory.
Thank you, Morten. Nauja, just give us your thoughts on how you've been feeling the first few weeks of the new year. We've spoken about Greenland before, your beloved Greenland. How are you feeling right now?
We're real people, and we have feelings as well. And at the moment, we are under a lot of pressure. I'm calling this time of period the rupture, where the Americans, our friends, our closest allies, are sort of dividing the people from within the society, which is causing a lot of pain at the moment, actually, because, like you said, we are a very, very small population, and this is really starting to make us very stressful. And some of our kids are asking, are we going into war? Why is this happening? I myself, speaking as a Greenlandic person, having my kids living in Nuuk and planning to move there for a period myself, I have to say this is very painful.
Thank you, Nauja. Jamie, I want to put to you the words of the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. She has said, threatening an ally is something we've not seen before. Everything comes to an end, and I mean that. She's talking about NATO. How concerned are you, Jamie?
Well, I'm concerned because clearly, is there really a problem here? And as it were, for disrupting NATO, which benefits the United States as well as Europe, if there isn't really a threat or a problem that demands that we go in that direction. And I don't think there is such a big problem. Greenland is important strategically, that's correct, but we're not dealing with a rogue Greenlander government like Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, who's sort of trading in drugs or terrorist activities. We're dealing with a democratically constitutionally elected government, which is very much pro the United States. And we're dealing with a sovereign power, Denmark, which has been one of the best and closest allies that the United States has. Secondly, the United States already under existing arrangements has pretty much carte blanche to increase its troops in Greenland if it wants to. It had 17 bases, I understand, in Greenland during the Cold War, but as was said earlier, now just got one. Thirdly, Greenland is already covered by NATO. It's part of NATO territory. And I know that the NATO allies are responding to the justified US point about the need to enhance security up there by thinking about how the Europeans, Denmark also with a $6 billion investment package, can improve security there. So there's a perfectly good solution on the table which doesn't disrupt NATO, which strengthens NATO, in fact, and doesn't require the US to launch any kind of military occupation or takeover. President Trump says it's all about security. And if he's really serious when he says that, there is a security solution at hand. Finally, I see Russia being extremely aggressive in Ukraine and Central Eastern Europe. And certainly the Russians have a greater presence in the North Atlantic now than they had before. But the Russians don't have anywhere near the wherewithal with shipping in the North Atlantic to threaten or invade Greenland. Neither does China. In fact, the Chinese vessels in the area has gone down in recent times, not up. So, let's first of all say, is there really a problem before we rush into solutions either fictitious or justified?
Thanks, Jamie. Carla, to you. So would Greenland, do you think, become a 51st state of the United States? Or what has Trump got in mind here?
Well, I think President Trump is looking at the Greenlandic people and saying they want development, they want prosperity. I mean, they told me they want great paying jobs and they want their economy to be good. So they're not reliant on Denmark. They want to go independent. They want to make their own laws and govern themselves. I would imagine, although I don't speak for the president, that he supports this. There are other countries around the world that are in an association with the United States where they make their own laws, they're in charge of their own lives, but the United States provides security for them. And Denmark has been doing a psyop on the Greenlandic people and making them terrified of the United States, unfortunately. They've been doing it through their media, through their polling, through Danish universities. And they've been trying to paint the United States, which has always been a good friend of Greenland, as an aggressor. We're not. I was able to put a consulate in Greenland and reestablish our diplomatic relationship after 67 years. We healed a lot of old wounds while I was ambassador. I was able to get the Coast Guard for Arctic security based in Denmark. But for instance, Greenland doesn't even have control of its own borders. In other words, it has ports that it doesn't have awareness of what's coming in and out because there just aren't enough people to police that. So we do have bad actors from China and Russia doing things covertly that they're not supposed to do. I think that the Greenlandic people will get to a good place with the United States. And I'm sorry that Denmark's not able to afford this asset of Greenland that they want to control. But they really have not treated the Greenlandic people well over the centuries. They've oppressed them. They kept them living in very primitive conditions until the US military went and occupied in the 20th century. We built almost all the infrastructure there, the airports, the ports, the bases. We were 1/4 of the population of Greenland for a long time, but we closed those bases after the fall of the Berlin Wall and turned them over, except for the one in the north, to Denmark. So I think that President Trump will find a good path forward since Denmark has clearly demonstrated that they're incapable and really unwilling to secure Greenland.
Thanks, Carla. Morten, quite a lot to unpick there. So basically, she's saying Denmark can't afford to keep Greenland. You've not been very good to the Greenlanders. We know it's a complicated relationship between Denmark and Greenland. What's your reading of what Carla just said?
It is a complicated relationship, but it has been for some years, and we're trying to mend that, and apologies have been given, and we've tried to help the Greenlandic people towards a path to independence. And that is the plan. But I'm not sure that that issue is related to security issues posed by the President of the United States in this case. It's tactical, it's a nice spin on things, but the relationship between Greenland and Denmark is our relationship to fix. Please stay out of it. I think that's the stance of the Danish government.
Nauja, tell us how the people of Greenland feel. I saw a quote the other day, people saying, we don't want to be Americans, we don't want to be Danish, we just want to be Greenlanders. Does that sum up your feeling?
Yes, exactly. And we certainly don't want to be Americans. There are some voices in Greenland talking about this free association together with the Americans, but it's less than 6% of the population that wants this. So people would rather work on staying in the Danish realm. And we do have some colonial past problems. Please don't interfere with that. We're trying to mend with this. It's actually a vulnerable position. And as regarding the safety in the Arctic region, we are already best friends with the Americans. And we can have the NATO help, and the Americans can be side by side with us all the time. If they want more bases, they can have more bases. If you want any other agreement, just call. I'm pretty sure you will never get a no. So that makes me think that this is about something else. It can't be about having control over Greenland and staying there, because you can get, I'm pretty sure, as much as you want. And as far as the Chinese and the Russian boats supposedly to be all over Greenland, it's not, they are not there.
Nauja, tell me, how close to independence do you think Greenland is right now?
I don't think Greenland is ever going to be completely independent. And I don't think that the Greenlanders now don't want that. I think it's everyone in the world wants to have more freedom, and the Greenlanders want that too. But they want to make alliances with people, maybe with the EU, maybe with Denmark, maybe with the United States. But just this annexation is something that's really insane and very, very painful. And I think it's also going to be painful for the world if the Americans make this annexation, because what's going to be next? What kind of signal is this going to send to other countries?
That's a very good point. Jamie, to you, just on that point, the world is clearly watching this. Beijing, for example, President Xi, how will he feel if America goes for this, takes Greenland? He will feel entitled to go into Taiwan, surely.
Well, Enda, as you know, I think, to be frank, President Xi has felt entitled to go to Taiwan ever since communist China gained control of mainland China in 1949 and looked to Formosa, now Taiwan, as a renegade state. So as far as Chinese intentions are concerned, in terms of the claim of sovereignty, one country, one nation and all of that, that's been clear for years. And I really don't think Xi's calculations will be influenced by what Trump does or does not do in Greenland. Although, yes, in terms of making the argument for the rules-based international order and pushing back on countries like Russia and China and others in the UN, and it's not just China. Many other countries now are grappling arms and thinking that there are military solutions around the globe. It sets a bad precedent. But my main point is that this is the wrong time for this kind of crisis in NATO. Just a week ago, we had in Paris a very good meeting with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the American envoys, and the Europeans on Ukraine. The US now working with the Europeans and Ukraine much more harmoniously on a Ukraine peace plan. US now committing to security guarantees, more economic interaction with Ukraine. All of this, we're actually moving forward now on the key global security issue for NATO, Ukraine, with the United States. The Europeans are meeting President Trump's quite justified requirement that they take care of their own security. And do we really want the European troops, which should be going to Ukraine, hopefully soon, to implement a peace agreement? Do we want these people to be diverted to Greenland, where there is infinitely less of a threat, simply to head off a US military takeover? It would be really the wrong diversion at the wrong time.
Thanks, Jamie. Carla, to you, we've heard European members of NATO say that they will work on a surveillance mission in the Arctic. They're calling it Arctic Sentry. We will see Germany, France, the UK. I mean, is this going to be enough to placate President Trump that the Europeans are actually doing something for Greenland?
The Europeans can't defend anything without the United States' help. And that's one of the things President Trump is encouraging them to do, is to actually get real capabilities that don't rely on the US. But I reject that this has anything to do with NATO. This is about an unpopular prime minister trying to galvanize internally to increase her polling numbers because she's so underwater. She's so unpopular. And she's done a good job for Denmark, but this is a situation where she's sort of stuck. And I will also say that the Danish politicians were gleeful to me, gleeful that Greenland would never want to go independent now because they had so scared the Greenlanders through their oppo work, their psyop on the Greenlanders, through the press, the media, and the negative things that they've shared to the Greenlanders. So that's a sad thing that they would actually be so gleeful about something so serious. But what we're not talking about is the fact that Denmark, part of NATO, is in violation of Article 3. They cannot defend Greenland. They've never had the ability. It's not the United States' job to defend other countries' property. It's the United States' job to defend our own country. Now, if there's a conflict, that's a different thing. But if there's an adversary that goes in and tries to take Greenland, how hard do you think it would be if Denmark's in charge? It would happen before they even woke up. Let's not forget, Danish military are unionized. They don't work on weekends and holidays. So imagine what could be done while they're asleep. It's really something that the Danes seem to be, well, I'll just say this about a lot of NATO allies, especially Western Europe, not Eastern Europe, because they've experienced communism. They understand the threats really. But these Western countries that are so rich and so self-satisfied that they're unwilling to face reality of the threats. The world is a much more dangerous place even than it was in President Trump's first term.
Morten, to you, I was under the impression Mette Frederiksen is quite popular in Denmark and is doing very well. Am I wrong?
Well, she's probably going to lose the next election, I think. So she's not very popular, but this is not her trying to save domestic issues. I'm very sure she would not have liked to talk about Greenland if she could avoid it. And of course, our military is also working on the weekends. I know the unions aren't popular in the US, but in Denmark, they are partners that the corporations work and government work alongside and together with. Also, another point to the psyops. I don't think Denmark can tell a very resilient Greenlandic people what to fear or what to feel. They are very headstrong and they know what is up and what is down. We haven't put the fear into the Greenlanders. We couldn't if we wanted, and we have never tried.
Thank you, Morten. Nauja, I want to bring you back in again just with a prediction for this year. I mean, will we be talking about this next year?
Enda, can I just say something back to Carla Sands?
Yes.
Please, we need to make some kind of reality check now. This is too much. This narrative that you're putting up here, it's outrageous. First of all, your President Trump is saying that I'm sure the Danes had a boat like 300 years ago, and I'm sure we had that too. I mean, haven't you just celebrated 250 years birthday? How could you have boats 300 years ago? And also this talk about the Danish realm, the Danish Arctic state not having a legislation to be here. I mean, we have documents signed by the US. I think it's really lacking a lot of reality, this narrative that you're trying to put on the agenda towards all the people in Greenland and in Denmark. I think that we just really, really want to be good friends with our, until now, closest ally, the United States. And I think that's a good place to start, with a reality check and then talk some facts. And have we had problems in our past? We've had huge problems. But Mette Frederiksen might face to lose an election, but she's actually, as regarding Greenland and the realm, she's popular because she has, and perhaps thanks to Trump, I would say that, but she has, like she said, we're now looking into the dark chapters of our relationship. And I think that's the work we're doing now. It's a painful job, and just please let us do this job. It's very painful, but we need to go through this process. And then why can we not stay allied? Because the problems that you're talking about, they're not there.
Thank you, Nauja. Jamie, final point to you. Do you think President Trump pushes on with this year, or next week will he be talking about Cuba or Colombia or somewhere else?
Well, he has been pretty consistent, Enda, as your viewers know, when it comes to Greenland, and he brought it up also in his first term. He's come back to it repeatedly in his second term. So I don't think he's going to sort of forget about it overnight. But there are two interpretations here. One is that President Trump is determined to acquire Greenland and perhaps turn it into the 51st state of the United States. And I personally certainly take the point that it's for the Greenlanders, on the basis of their free self-determination, to decide that, and it should not be a diktat that's imposed upon them by anybody else. But the other interpretation is that President Trump, is very good at using shock therapy. He did it with NATO, as Carla pointed out, on increasing defense spending, and he got a result. And maybe he's trying to tell the allies by using this kind of tough talk that you've got to sort of, invest more in the defense of this important area in the strategic north. If that's the point, I get it too. And I think that NATO should be making, as it's planning now in Brussels, a response there to share the burden with the United States, to have a greater presence in the region. But on the other hand, and this is my final point, Enda, the Europeans have demonstrated that where they really go in hard, as they did with Trump earlier and Zelensky on, turning around a very pro-Russian US peace proposal for Ukraine into a much more balanced document, where they lobby just as hard as Trump lobbies and puts their point across, then they can persuade the president to take a different course. And I hope this is what's going to happen.
Jamie, thank you. I think we will be talking about this again somehow. Morten, thanks to you, and Nauja Lynge and Carla Sands in Washington, D.C. What an insightful conversation. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.